I think you told me once that not unlike a lot of small businesses, you started off with your mother and your wives, yours and your brother's wives doing the office work. How did that progress and how did that evolve?
Well, that was Dad kind of got us started going down this road. We had no idea about organization of businesses. We actually had 3 different wives that were running the accounting team. And then eventually we outgrew that. Now, actually, the corporate accounting team is in my office for Ironsight, and that includes a controller and probably going to be about 10 people in the accounting.
Welcome back to Beacon for Business. I'm Brett Spencer, owner of Spencer Business Advisory. I help companies strengthen their financial health and streamline operations. Today, my guest is Greg Sloan, former president of Sloan Security Group. Greg has a marketing degree from the University of Idaho, and with his parents and 3 brothers, owned and managed Sloan Security Group for 32 years, growing the company to 120 employees, which was acquired by Ironsight in 2024. Greg continues to have a leadership role with the company. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Sloan Security Group as a fractional CFO, and I was always impressed by the professional and love the entire family had for each other and for their company's employees. Greg, can you talk a little bit about how Sloan Security Group was started and how it developed over the years?
Yeah, thank you, Brett. In 1991, we started Sloan Forest Construction to pay for college. We had, it was just a summer job that my oldest brother and I were working. And as we went through the years of doing summer jobs and working through different customers, through different clients, fencing was a big part of what we started doing. We ended up working for the Forest Service in Oregon for 3 years while going to college. And then in 1998, after I graduated from college, we hired our first full-time employee. And from then on, it was a growth mode with my oldest brother, Bryce, and then my younger brothers, Rusty and Colin, as we continued to grow and look for opportunities to become a bigger company, to become a better company. We didn't start out with that in mind, but as we kept going, we kept getting more and more excited about the opportunities and the team that we developed. So up through 2024, and we sold our company to Ironsight, Ironsight.com, which is a national provider of security and services. And what we've done since then is tried to integrate a bunch of companies together that can provide national coverage for national clients.
So you began digging fire trails and building fence, and then Sloan Security, what kinds of products do you provide now? I take it it's a little more than just straight fencing.
Yeah, we have a lot of crash-rated products, anti-terrorism style gates, fences, barriers that we're installing. Data centers are a huge opportunity right now. We have data center construction projects all over the country. But in addition to our construction, we have a super strong service team that's spread out all over the country from coast to coast, actually, with over 250 technicians that are able to maintain and service and repair anything from crash barriers, gate operators, garage doors, cameras, access control components that are kind of the perimeter of the security environment. And with our new team members and the opportunities we have with Ironsight, we've been able to start to provide more national coverage, and we have more service technicians than most other companies across the United States.
So what kind of infrastructure did you have in the early days, and how did you grow it to what you have now?
Well, Excel was a big part of our whole environment from the beginning. And once we kind of progressed from the spreadsheet style into a database world. It was moving away from QuickBooks into Foundation, for example, which is where you were helping us kind of put our processes together in the accounting world, trying to figure out how to do better estimates, which it turned into Bid to Win as an estimating platform. And then we were trying to track our leads and our opportunities. And so that turned into Pipedrive. We started grabbing all these different companies' products that we were using to do more than just exist, and more than just to do what we were doing at a basic level. And then in 2018, we added Procore in as a project management platform. And at that point, we were pretty solid in our processes and procedures, and we were then strategized and set up to grow because we had processes in place that weren't just everybody doing things one-off on a spreadsheet.
And that back office that could support everything that the field was doing, and also the bidding process and finding the work. Is that correct?
What we ended up doing really was having owners of each category of back office support. We had someone that was owning the finance. That was you for a bit. And then we had someone that was owning the business development world, and then the estimating, and then the project management. And as we grew, one of the benefits that we had was having 4 owners that were in the business daily. And so we could allocate responsibilities to different brothers that had different skill sets. And at times that wasn't an easy thing to respect the brothers. Sometimes family is a little bit too familiar, but that gave us the opportunity to grow and to go beyond just the skills of one person. Like if it was just me running the entire business, sales is not my strong suit. Operations is. And so if it was just me, we would have been hamstrung by the sales process. But in that portion of the business, I had 2 brothers that were great at it. And so they were able to take the sales process and run with it. And they could win any job. And at the operations level, we could figure out how to get it done. And that's kind of what our success has been, working all over the world, whether it was border fences or embassies. We could figure out how to get stuff done. We could figure out reasonable ways to price stuff. And it took a team.
I was brought in. The Sloan Security Group had not had an accountant yet. They had a great team. They had really a very good bookkeeper in the office, but they were as Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They needed the higher level accounting work done, and to be able to get the revenue recognition issues taken care of, and also be able to present financial statements to the bank whenever financing was being contemplated. So I came in, and I think it was 3 or 4 years I worked with the company until you were ready to hire a full-time CFO. And so provide that financial, that higher level of financial input into the management. Sloan was very generous in that I was involved in, I think, several of the management meetings, and then also the year-end ownership and board meetings for a few years in there.
Well, I think it was probably driven by external forces from the banking and the bonding, where we kept trying to do bigger and bigger projects. And when it comes to bigger projects, there's more risk there. When you have to bond a project, you're making insurance-based commitments that you're going to be able to fulfill your contract value. And what happens is your financials have to support that. And if we don't have detailed and accurate financials, then they really can't make those commitments. In 2000 and, well, let's go backwards. The bigger the projects, the farther away they were, the riskier they were, and the more oversight that we got from our financial partners, the banks, the bonding companies. And so that was where I think it really came in to be that we needed someone to help us do more than just get our income statements out, but really to understand them and make sure we're doing them right. I would say the strategy was to go find what we're doing that we aren't doing that we should. And I think that was probably the revenue recognition with the work in progress reporting was a big deal of stabilizing and evening out the income and the expense. Without those two being in the same period, you have massive fluctuations in profitability from a month to month basis, and it's really, really hard. So for anybody to rely on that on a long-term basis. And so that was the evening out of the revenue and the expense category into an earned revenue recognition model was the biggest thing, I would say.
With the banks, and specifically in the construction industry that Sloan operates in, with the banks and the bonding company, they need to be able to have a snapshot of the financial health of the company at any given time based on what projects they're reacting to. If they're we worked to increase the line of credit quite a bit to do a large project for Apple, and then the bonding company was an ongoing thing because they had several projects that had to be bonded, and there's a lot of risk in the bonding process. So the more you can prove that you have your act together and that you know what you're doing, and you can prove that you have a profitable company, the better the outcome's going to be for the company.
I think the most important part for someone, an organization that's doing construction, is to really be able to dial in your projected cost of completion. So you have a continually updating status of the job, and then you can measure that against your budgets and what you've billed versus what you've earned. And if you have a big overbilling or a big underbilling, those are good warning indicators that you might have a potential margin fade or margin gain, depending on how the numbers are lining up. But it's a good indicator up front to say, oh, is our expected margin starting to drop because our costs are climbing and we can't bill against those because we're not complete enough. We're 50% complete with our expenses. So we can't bill 50% on our revenue, but we need to. And so there's some good indicators in there for construction companies that you have the potential that your projects could be going awry. And that's just a really good tool to look at them up front.
You have to have the infrastructure, an adequate infrastructure to know what your numbers are, and not just one point in time, once or twice a year. You need to know where you're at on an ongoing basis, and you need to be able to use that information to help manage the company and help manage the projects. The external demands for that information is very important. And the banks and the bonding companies and insurance companies depend on a lot of that information to make their decisions on whether to do business with the company. So whether it's with construction, it's very important because you've got projects, and some of those projects are very large. Some of them have higher risks than others. And so you've got to do that risk analysis. I mean, you have to have the data available to be able to do that risk analysis.
One of the things that we're starting to see is the general contractors are doing financial analysis on subcontractors. And so we have to upload our financial statements into general contractor portals, and they get to do their own risk analysis to see what it is who they're hiring and can they rely on them to adequately perform the work that they've made the commitments to. And so the pre-qualifications of subcontractors to general contractors has become a pretty big deal now. It happens on a lot. All the big contractors, whether we work for the very largest contractors in the country, and whether it's a stadium or an embassy or a data center or whatever it is that needs highest level security, they're usually huge projects, and they usually have a full finance team that's vetting and updating and reviewing the subcontractors' performance and capabilities and financials.
General contractors, not unlike bonding companies and banks, and the construction company and the subcontractor, are trying to manage risk just like everyone else. And the magnitude of the projects that Greg's talking about, you're talking sometimes into the billions, definitely into the tens or hundreds of millions. So that information is gold. You need to be able to provide that information if you want to succeed in operating in that territory. We've talked about this a little bit, and what I've seen with some of my clients is the CEO and or the owner or the entrepreneur, not always the same person, but sometimes there's a bit of isolation that takes place, and the rest of the management team, or if there's an executive team, doesn't necessarily see the pressures that person has. With your family dynamic, it appears that you were able to bounce things off of each other and work through problems. But one of the things that you pointed out to me was you came to the conclusion that you needed to share more with your team outside of the family circle, and how that helped your company and helped it grow. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges that small businesses have is knowing what information is enough, or what information is too much, or what information is not enough. And I've always been of the opinion that our employees are trying to do the best job possible. And how can we get them the information they need so that they can help us get to our company to where it wants to go, where we need to go, our vision for success. And when we were young in our lifespan of the organization, it was definitely, we were holding the information in, didn't feel like our employees should know or would be able to handle the information professionally, or we got the feeling that, if you had a contract, that was how much the Sloans made. And that was, when you hear things like that, then you kind of hang on to information even tighter. But once we were able to develop a leadership team that we could trust, and we have great leaders, then we were able to give them the information that they needed, that they could understand how they impacted the organization. They could contribute to goal setting. They could lead teams underneath them because they had the information that they needed to be able to communicate. If you have a communication that is just do it because I said so, it's really hard for employees and leaders to really understand why you said you can or cannot do this. But if you give some perspective and say, this is where we're going, this is where we want to be going, where we're trying to get to, and you give them the steps in the meantime that you're shooting for, this is what we're going to do here and here and here. And when an opportunity presents itself, for example, a job comes in, you can look at that job and say that fits our strategic vision, the direction we're going, or it doesn't. And then the employees can then take that information and they understand it. They don't have, well, they just didn't like my job because they don't like me. No, it didn't fit our strategy. And it wasn't a project that we had a strategic advantage on. And so it was going to take resources away that weren't going to benefit the company in bidding jobs that we could actually get. That was kind of a big part of our understanding, and it only took us probably 20 years to figure that out. As we grew and matured and made mistakes and learned from our mistakes, and our employees stuck with us and helped us get to this point in life that we have great trust and we have great leaders. And that was what made our organization, that was something that we could actually sell, because it wasn't just the entire organization existing in someone with the last name of Sloan process. It was the fact that we had developed teams, we had leaders, and we could do something for the business and for the owners that really gave new opportunities for our employees to actually take on a higher leadership role at the new company. And that's actually happened. We have quite a few of our employees that are now leaders in a bigger organization than it was just at Sloan.
You kind of gave them the gift. You prepared them for this opportunity. That seems to be something you've always enjoyed, is sharing how to develop leaders and creating growth, and buy-in within the organization through transparency that we've just been talking about. I also love to work on business process improvement and helping other businesses learn from their experience. When I was working with you, you were involved in a local group where it was business owners that would get together once a month and share what you're doing and look for feedback. Is that something that you saw was a real benefit?
Yes, we have continued. I've continued to need and to be passionate about business and the development and contributing to other people's experiences as they run their businesses, and continuing to learn from other businesses. I'm in a Vistage group, which is a business leadership opportunity for CEOs and executives. And I call it organized play dates for professionals, because for those that, like myself, who are steeped in the operations, and I don't necessarily get out to get perspective and feedback from other business professionals, it kind of forces that. And it makes me put something on my calendar to go and learn and to go and help and to go and teach in some situations. And actually this week, I'm going to be putting on a strategic planning course at the Vistage Group and helping people get ready for their 2026 strategic plans and budgeting as we go through this year. I get excited about that and the opportunity to learn and the opportunity for each. Everybody that's involved in an organization like that to really figure out what mistakes other people have made so that you don't have to make the same mistakes, or what successes other companies have had, then you can tie onto that and say, hey, this worked really good for them. So that's what I get excited about, the leadership opportunities that come with CEO and executive groups. And the Vistage group that we have in Boise, it's run by Joe DeVera as the mentor and the facilitator on that. And in order to be eligible for a Vistage group, you have to be at least a $3 to $5 million sized business and to be able to contribute. And it needs a CEO or an executive that is responsible for the direction and of the organization. And it comes down to really having people that are be your board of directors, and that you can have people that don't have an agenda for your organization, maybe within the organization, and you can ask the tough questions internally with a small group that you trust. You've been together for a while, and it provides a lot of value being that trusted advisor organization for you. From a Vistage mentor facilitator role, it's really getting the people together that can then contribute to the success and the challenging questions that different business owners ask each other.
That's great. So we've talked a lot about your team, your field teams. Let's back up a little bit and talk about your office staff and how that developed. I think you told me once that not unlike a lot of small businesses, you started off with your mother and your wives, yours and your brother's wives doing the office work. And how did that just to, how did that progress and how did that evolve?
Well, that was kind of, Dad kind of got us started going down this road. We had no idea about organization of businesses. I was back in the QuickBooks days, and then our mother helped with the accounting side of things. We were still kind of on a part-time basis with business, only working during the summers. And then once we went to full-time, we actually had 3 different wives that were running um, the accounting team, as in it was themselves, bookkeeping for a long time. And then eventually we outgrew that. We kept having too many children and it became a distraction. Our business kept getting bigger, and we had our first full-time accounting person that wasn't a family member, was actually one of our friends, and she did a great job for us for a while. And then we kept growing, and I think Kim was in accounting when you came to help work with us, and the team just kept growing. And we added a CFO, a full-time CFO eventually. And now actually the corporate accounting team is in my office for Ironsight. And that includes a controller and probably going to be about 10 people in the accounting team at this point. So the
So
back
when I
office
got there,
support was important. Because we kept being really complicated. We kept doing certified payroll type projects. We kept doing international situations. We kept going to different states. And every time you go into a different state, you have to register your business. You got taxes you got to deal with. You got work comp. And the complexity of our business was not one that we ever stayed in the ease of business category. And that probably made it harder on us a lot of times. And required a bigger back office support team to take care of that. Currently, we're licensed in like 30 states, and every state we're licensed in, we have to be registered with a Secretary of State. We have to be able to pay taxes. We have to have work comp. We have to have all the things that it takes to be able to perform work in all these places.
yes, that was definitely, I saw that when I was there. The other thing that I saw was, you had reached the point where you needed to have monthly financial statements. And what I see with a lot of smaller companies, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a bit with you. You do your taxes at the end of the year. The CPA firm provides a compilation. Well, actually, I think you had audited statements or reviewed statements. So you have a snapshot at the end of the year where you kind of know where you're at. But then as you grew and needed to share more with your team, and then also the need to, one of the things that we did while I was there is we increased the line of credit quite a bit in order to go after a large contract. And so the accounting became more front and center. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I think as we worked through our the lifespan of the business, going from on the construction side to with that you get earned revenue calculations instead of just billing. And I think it took me 20 years to figure out how to do that. And I think you're a big part of creating those work in progress reports that we could then present to the bank and the bonding company with confidence. Without the accrued revenue associated with the work in progress, you're not going to have consistent financials. You're going to have ebbs and flows with billings and expenses not being in the same period. And so that was a big step because everything comes down to having collateral, having good financial back end, having good backlog processes. And without a strong financial situation or a system, you can't really explain what's going on. And you can't explain to your banking and to your bonding companies what you need to do, what you're doing, where you currently sit. And I'm sure even when you were helping us back then, I'm sure you ended up explaining some things to us that we didn't understand for years and for years and years.
You were good students. You were good clients. It's the I need to get my head straight here. I lost my train of thought.
We can talk about earned value for years.
Yeah. Well,
earned revenue.
And you mentioned, so you know, a good example is you mentioned accruals of revenue, earned revenue. You have a construction company, and that has its own unique ways of accruing or recognizing revenue. So if that doesn't happen, if you don't recognize your revenue, you have weeks or months and months of expenses and costs. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year or the end of the project, all of a sudden you have all this revenue coming in. You know, I think you've highlighted the importance of that. And especially when you're talking to banks and bonding companies, I know you had a bonding company you're working for, and they're always interested in how you're doing financially.
Yeah. The earned revenue, which is what we're calling it now, which is the calculation off of our work in progress, is I don't even work on that anymore. I have my accounting team does and my managers, and but it took us a long time to get to that point, to the point that now we're actually projecting our costs for those that haven't dealt with that environment. You get revenue based on your project cost, and now we're projecting based on cost, not based on revenue. We're projecting our costs so that we can create our revenue and get that. And that's been pretty hard on the project teams to change that mindset, not just what am I going to bill, but what are we going to actually have expenses associated with the project so that will earn us the revenue, the margin above and beyond the cost.
And it's always good to have a clear look at where you're at within within that project, to see whether you are upside down at it or whether you look like your profit is your projected profit is on target.
Yeah. We end up spending a lot of time every month. We do a projected cost of completion and use that to monitor our ongoing projected revenue margin for projects. And so we measure against that, and that then gives us our expected margin, and then you multiply that on top of your cost, and that's what you get for your revenue. So every time that we can go through with our teams, because it's down to the project manager level, the assistant project manager level now. It's not even our vice president of construction. It's not even our senior project manager. All of our project teams that are managing projects are down to that level of detail. And that's because we were able to say, hey, you know what? You can help us with this information. And it trains the people all the way down the chain so that the people with the boots on the ground are the ones that are actually doing the projections of costs. They're doing all the way through and actively managing their projects. And that's something that our team's done a great job doing.
That's really powerful and important that the crew on the project understands where you're at with the project and where you need to be. So that's great. So you're still involved with the company even though it's sold. And it sounds like you haven't walked away from the leadership or the management of that. And hopefully that'll all work out for you. And I wish you the best with that.
Mm. Yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity to kind of leverage all the things that we've done over the past 30 years and help share it with more internal customers, employees, different branches. We've got 9 or 10 different branches across the United States, that we're able to work with now and to try and bring up and standardize our operations from a fleet, safety, production management, service management level. So I'm excited about that.
Well, great. Well, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to come and speak about this today. I very much appreciate that, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I get excited about speaking on business and learning from others, and I'm always happy to help.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Brett.
Good luck.